Hi BookTube, my name is Juan, I am just one reader and I am legit enthralled. I am absolutely excited to make this review. Today I want to review the Liveship Traders Trilogy by Robin Hobb, a BookTube darling and rightly so. This is the second trilogy in her Realm of the Elderlings super series, and it's made up of Ship of Magic, Book 1, Book 2, The Mad Ship, and Book 3, Ship of Destiny. Feel free to watch this review. There will be no spoilers ahead at all. Essentially, what I want to do in this review is tell you briefly what the series is about, sort of what you should expect going into the series before you read, and also just tell you some of the positives and negatives, some pros and cons that I have found in this particular series within the Realm of the Elderlings, but also more generally about Robin Hobb as an author. So let's start at the very beginning. Let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. So what is the Liveship Traders Trilogy? It is the second trilogy within the Realm of the Elderlings, which is Robin Hobb's super series, which is made up of several trilogies and one quartet. I have only read these books in a certain order. I read the Farseer books first and then the Liveship Traders, and I certainly recommend that you do so as well. Essentially, with the Farseer books, I found a lot of problems, even though I really loved many qualities in those books. There were a lot of flaws and problems, and in terms of the storytelling, the pacing, the plotting, and the writing, there were many things that I thought were lacking, and almost all of those problems were quite successfully solved in the Liveship Traders Trilogy. So that's the first thing that I want to tell you, in case you are sort of maybe hesitant about picking up the Liveship Traders books, because the Farseer books have some problems, but Liveship Traders is just far superior to the Farseer books. They're just 1,000 times better. So a general synopsis of the Liveship Traders trilogy is quite complicated, so I will just go to the really basic premise of the story. Essentially, in book 1, we are following the members of the Vestrit family. They are a trader family. That means that they are living in this town called Bingtown, and they are in possession of what is called a live ship. A live ship is a special ship. It's a ship that is made of wizard wood, and that kind of magical material and substance gives these ships, the live ships, a sort of magical ability. It almost provides them with a soul and with memories and with sort of human kind of characteristics, but still being very magical. And in order for a live ship to develop this kind of awareness or consciousness, 3 members of that family have to die on the deck of the ship, which is a really great concept. So we follow the members of the Vestrit family, and they own one of these live ships, but then some crazy things start to happen. Some family dynamics start to move the story forward, and we just follow the different cast of characters as they go their separate ways. And one of the protagonists is trying to reclaim her possession of that live ship. Then we follow, I really don't want to spoil anything, and I actually recommend that you go into this trilogy as blindly as possible, because for me, and this is just my opinion, this is just my experience, for me, one of the great joys was not knowing quite a lot about the story or the world building, and so getting this sense of discovery and awe and wonderment was really fascinating. But just know that we follow a great cast of characters, a very diverse cast of characters, female characters, male characters, good characters, bad characters, really wonderfully gray, morally gray characters, and we just follow them along. But then some other more magical things start happening, and we follow some other plot lines that I don't want to really go deeply into those because I think I might spoil some of the wonders that Liveship Traders has to offer for you. Before I get into the pros and cons, I want to tell you a little bit about each book, what I thought about each book individually, my star rating, and just some of the experiences that I had with each installment. So the first book in the trilogy is The Ship of Magic. Ship of Magic I gave 5 stars to. In a way, this might be the most magical of the trilogy. The experience of reading this book was absolutely enthralling. Many people say that this book is slow. I completely disagree. I don't know what kind of reader would find this slow or boring. Now, they have a point, because The Liveship Traders by Robin Hobb is a trilogy that is incredibly character driven. Therefore, we have a lot of internal monologue and internal sort of experience of each character. If you find that boring, then this is not a channel for you, because I really love getting into characters' heads and emotional how they emotionally process the world around them, and this series in general is just a masterclass of that. So Ship of Magic I don't think is boring or slow at all, but it is true that the first maybe 300-400 pages of this book are there's a lot of setup, there's a lot of figuring out who's who, and you know, all of the characters in this huge cast, and sort of putting every character in place for the rest of the storylines that are going to play out eventually in future installments. But I thought this book was just magical. I was completely immersed and involved and invested, and I immediately gave it 5 stars. It was just brilliant. Then the second book is The Mad Ship, and I also gave this 5 stars. This book introduces more of the magical, fantastical elements in terms of the dragons and the serpents, which you can actually see on the cover. There, you know that there's going to be dragons and sea serpents and all of that. This book was... There was more politics in this book, and that sort of made it a little heavier for me and a little bit more dense, but it was never, it never dragged. I never thought it was boring. I actually think this might be the best one. The final 300 pages of this book are absolutely fantastic, and things escalate and things become just unreal. They are really, really good, and I loved the mystery of that, the sort of mystery that is explained a bit more in this book about the nature of the life ships and what they have to do with dragons and all of this. There's like a lot of really great mysteries in here and a lot of enigmas in this series, and in this book we really get closer to finding out the truth, and the ending is just brilliant. I loved it. And then we have book 3, which I thought, in all honesty, was far weaker to book 1 and book 2. I gave Ship of Destiny 4 stars. I enjoyed it. I love the ending. I think the ending was brilliant. Like the epilogue of the book almost made me stand up and applaud. It was great. But the book is way too long. There's a lot of politics that really don't matter that much, in my opinion, or at least I personally felt that some plot lines and some character arcs were not as successfully resolved. I don't think Robin Hobb is the greatest yet at writing a conclusion and a third book. One of my biggest problems with the Farseer books was that book 3 is horrible. It's a horrible book, in my opinion. She just completely destroyed that series with that third book. And here, this is 1,000 times better than anything from Farseer. But you can tell that she is great at the earlier stages of writing a trilogy, and then here the conclusion was more or less successful. But all in all, I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. I wish this had been more edited, and also that some characters had more resolution and more to do. But all in all, it's a really, really solid ending to a great series. And now, finally, let's get into my pros and cons, because this is not a perfect trilogy. Many people seem to think that it is, and many people will say that the Liveship Traders is like the best thing ever. There's a certain idealization for Robin Hobb in general, and for this trilogy in particular. I see that a lot of people are just applauding left and right, and I think they are right in many regards, but it's not a perfect trilogy in my humble opinion. So let's get into the pros first and the cons later. So the pros. So these are some of the really, really shining things, the shining gems that you will find in the Liveship Traders trilogy. First of all, the characters, right? I mean, there are so many great characters within these three books. Female, male, good, bad. Some of them are not fully good or bad. I think no one is. Even the closest to a villain that these books have to offer, which is Kennit, the pirate, it would be really easy to think of Kennit as a monster, or as a sociopath, or as a authoritative figure of power, and I heartily disagree. I think Kennit actually is one of the best things in Liveship Traders, because there's just so much backstory. I mean, book 3 especially is Kennit's book, and you really get to understand a morally gray, mostly a reprehensible character, but a very morally gray character. You really get to understand where he's coming from and what has made him be who he is. But there are so many wonderful characters to follow. Some of them are very relatable. Some of them you really identify with and root for at the beginning of the series, and by the end you hate them with a passion. And also the other way around. Your perspective on these characters is always evolving and changing constantly, and it's a masterclass in good character writing. Secondly, another thing that I loved about the Liveship Traders trilogy was the sense of world building and the emphasis on nature. The Rain Wilds, Jamalia City, Bingtown itself, the sea, the ships, all of these wonderful settings and the concepts that are essential to this world building that Robin Hobb is creating here. They are just wonderful things, life ships. And there's some other things about Wizardwood and the origins of Wizardwood, which I will not spoil. And then there's the thing with sea serpents and dragons and a certain kind of river that has these kind of magical properties. And there's just wonderful nature writing and world building in general. And another thing that I loved was the themes, because the Liveship Traders trilogy, even though it is within the fantasy genre, I say is incredibly thought-provoking. There's not a single character or a single important event that happens in these books that doesn't make you think about something relevant. So these are just some of the themes that are explored constantly throughout the series. We have slavery, we have gender, we have the nature of our expectations and our desires, and how we think about the future. There's shades of gray within humanity, and there's a very interesting exploration of trauma and suffering, ecology, human life, and other forms of life as well. And also this idea of rebirth and change and metamorphosis and evolution. Like I said, everything in these books is constantly evolving, and nothing is ever what you thought it was going to end up being. And on top of everything else, we have Robin Hobb's beautiful writing style. She is a great craftsman or craftswoman with words. She really develops beautiful descriptions and language, and it really comes to life. The writing is beautiful. Sometimes I do think it gets in the way though. So this actually leads me to my cons, the things that I thought were still a work in progress for Robin Hobb. So the first thing is the storytelling and the pacing. Even though they are dramatically improved if you compare them to the Farseer books, I mean, it's superior. It's far superior to the Farseer books. But within the Liveship Traders trilogy, Robin Hobb's storytelling chops and her sense of pace is not always the best one. Sometimes the books, especially book 3, really comes to a halt, and there's a lot of politics, and it feels very repetitive. It feels like it could have been trimmed down and it would have benefited the storytelling. Yeah, I found that book 3 in particular really had a lot of politics, and I am not a political kind of reader. I really don't care that much about that part of any book. So here I just thought it was a little too much. I do think that the books could use more dialogue, but that's just a personal preference thing, because as a reader, I really enjoy dialogue. I really love dialogue because it moves scenes along. In my opinion, it's just something that would have helped me as a reader with these books. Robin Hobb is not the greatest at writing action. The third book has a sort of final battle, if you can call it that I found a little confusing and a little anticlimactic, actually. She's just not great at writing action. She never has been so far. She's great at writing some other things, but just action, not so much. And yeah, another con that I wrote here on my notes is book 3. I think book 3, as great as it is, it could have been better. It could have been more climactic, it could have been more spectacular, and there are some characters that I felt were a little forgotten. Not completely forgotten, like, you know, the final seasons of Game of Thrones, but I certainly was expecting certain characters to have more to do and to have another moment in book 3, and they didn't. And finally, this is going to be a bit problematic to say, but I felt that sometimes Robin Hobb wants to put the gender discourse and themes, and, you know, these explorations of gender and gender stereotypes a little too heavy-handedly and a little too obviously in her books, and sometimes it was just too evident, to the point that I felt I could see Robin Hobb sort of in the backstage, just like a puppet master, you know, like really trying to say something important about gender and about women's rights and about some other things that I won't go into because spoilers. But yeah, sometimes I did feel it was a little bit heavy-handed, but it was never really a huge problem for me. So those are some of my thoughts about the Liveship Traders trilogy by Robin Hobb. A really wonderful trilogy, not a perfect one, I think, but I just really love what she's doing in the realm of the Elderlings. I am going to read the Tawny Man trilogy, which is the next Fitz and Fool trilogy. I don't know if I will do that in 2021. Maybe I will wait it out just a few more months. But I really want to continue reading the realm of the Elderlings, because I think she as an author has got something really special going on. Thanks for watching this long review. I hope you can tell me some of your thoughts about the Liveship Traders. And if you are looking for a good fantasy standalone kind of trilogy, I think you could read just the Liveship Traders. You don't have to read the entire realm of the Elderlings. It's a pretty self-contained story, very successful and really wonderful. And yeah, as an entire trilogy, I would give it 5 stars, or very close to a 5-star rating. I still have some problems with the pacing and the storytelling in book 3, but all in all, I think it's just one of the great reading experiences that I have had in recent years. Thanks for watching. I am Just One Reader, and I hope you pick these books up.